His world was very small. That world was only as long as a heavy chain. The cold metal of the chain always touched his fur. He never wanted it there. He remembered a time before, fuzzy memories of warmth and a soft hand. But that was a long, long time ago. Like a dream you can barely remember when you wake up. Now there was just the chain, hard dirt under his paws, and a burning feeling in his empty tummy. He wasn't taken care of. He was like a shadow tied in a corner of the yard, and his happy light inside was going out, bit by bit. When the sun was super hot, there was no shade for him. When it rained, he would shiver from the cold. The wet feeling went deep, right to his bones. When they remembered to give him food, his bowl was almost empty. Sometimes it was just scraps, dry and with no taste. Other times it stayed empty for days and days. It felt like a mean trick. He would lick the bowl all clean, hoping to find even a tiny piece of food or just a little smell of it. Hunger was always with him, a pain that never really went away. You could start to see his ribs under his thin fur. His eyes used to be bright and sparkly, but now they were dull. They showed how sad his life was. He was slowly fading away. The people who could help didn't seem to care. They didn't hear his quiet cries or see his pain. He often rested his head on his paws and watched the world go by, just past where his chain could reach. He saw other dogs, free and playing. Their bark sounded so happy, a happiness he could only dream about. He saw kids laughing and reaching out their little hands to pet the dogs on the street. He really, really wished for someone to pet him, just a gentle touch or a kind word. He wanted it so badly it hurt, but his chain held him tight. It was like a mean anchor keeping him stuck in a big, lonely sea. He was like a forgotten soul. His days just went by with the sun coming up and going down and that awful hunger in his belly. The nights were the worst. The cold would creep in, and the world would get quiet, leaving him all alone with his sadness. He would curl up as small as he could, trying to keep his own little bit of body heat. Sometimes he would cry very softly, and his little whimpers would get lost in the dark. He dreamed of running free, feeling the wind in his fur. He dreamed of a full tummy and a soft hand petting him. But when he woke up, the chain was always there. It was a cold, hard reminder of what was real. His hope was like a tiny, fragile thing, easy to break. But somehow, a little bit of it stayed alive, like a tiny spark of fire in his very sad, dark world. When people walked by on the street, a little bit of hope would light up inside him. He'd lift his head, his ears would perk up. He couldn't bark very loud, he was just too weak, and his throat was dry from being thirsty and not using it much. Instead, just a soft little whimper would come out, a quiet begging sound. It was like a quiet call for help, a sad little plea to anyone who looked his way. His skinny, tangled tail would thump the dusty ground once or twice with hope, a little sign that he was waiting hopefully. He would look at them with his big, sad eyes, trying to show them how much he was hurting, how much he needed help. Sometimes a kind person would stop. Someone might pause, and seeing how bad he looked, their faces would get soft with kindness. They might say a few kind words, and the sound of their voice felt like a warm hug to his lonely heart. He would watch them very carefully, his whole body and spirit leaning into that tiny moment of connection. Maybe this time, he'd think, maybe this person will understand. Maybe they'd give him a little food, or some water, or at least give him a gentle pat. These little moments were like tiny sparks of light in his dark life, quick moments that kept the last little bit of hope alive in his tired spirit. But these hopeful moments usually didn't last very long. The owner of the house, a man with a hard, mean face, would show up right then. If he saw anyone being a little kind to the dog, his face would twist up with anger. "Get away from that thing!" he would yell, his voice harsh and full of meanness. "He's fine, just leave him be!" His words were like a cold wave, washing away the little spark of warmth the kind person felt. That kind person, either scared or not wanting trouble, would usually hurry away, with one last helpless, sorry look at the poor chained animal. And that's how the dog learned that help was something that didn't last, something that got scared off easily. The owner's meanness was like a big wall. After every time his hope was crushed, the dog's head would hang a little lower, his soft whimpers would stop, and he would just give up quietly. He would pull back into himself again. That little flash of hope would go out, leaving him alone again with his hunger and his chains. The world outside his small, trapped life seemed like it didn't care, and the one person who could change his life was the one making him suffer so much. He was trapped, not just by a metal chain, but by a wall of human meanness. His owner hardly ever talked to him, just sometimes he'd pour a little water into his bowl, or throw some scraps of food his way. There was no affection, no kindness, just a cold, doing it just to do it kind of duty, if you could even call it that. The dog was just like a piece of furniture, a forgotten responsibility. Sometimes the owner would walk by, he'd glance at him but not really see him, like the dog was just part of the stuff around. This not caring probably hurt more than outright meanness. It always reminded him how unimportant he was, that in his owner's eyes, he had no value. He wasn't a pet at all, just an unwanted burden. The owner seemed to get a strange, quiet joy from seeing the dog suffer. Maybe having complete control over another living thing made him feel powerful. He never talked to the dog, never a single word of comfort. His presence was like a silent dread, an unspoken threat that always kept the dog filled with fear. The dog had learned to make himself small, trying as much as possible not to be noticed, hoping to avoid the owner's anger. He understood in his own way that his life was very uncertain, depending on the mood of a man who felt nothing but hate for him. Then, one day, the familiar daily routine of the house was broken. Sounds of pain, raised voices, and the sound of strangers hurrying about. The owner, who had seemed so strong and stern, suddenly fell sick. He was taken away, his face pale and twisted with pain. The house fell into a strange silence, a stillness that, while unsettling for the dog, somehow held a tiny bit of hope. He didn't understand what had happened, but he could sense a change in the atmosphere, a break in the suffocating routine that had controlled his life for so long. He lay in his spot, listening, waiting. A strange mix of worry and hope churned inside him. For a day or two things were confusing. Other people came and went from the house, their faces worried. They seemed distracted, their attention was on other things. Everyone had almost forgotten about the dog. His bowl remained empty, the water turned cloudy. But then, someone, perhaps a relative or a neighbor looking after the house, finally noticed him. They saw the heavy chain, his skinny body, the desperate look in his eyes. Maybe it was pity, or just a practical decision made in all the confusion, but for the animal who had suffered for so long, a change was about to come. Gap 2S. Even the air seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. It happened all of a sudden. A hesitant hand reached for the ring on its collar. It shivered with fear, thinking it would be hit or yanked hard. Years and years of neglect had taught it to expect pain, but instead there was a click sound. The heavy chain, its lifelong companion, its lifelong burden, dropped to the ground with a clatter, like a lifeless snake. It froze for a moment, not believing it. Was this a trick? Was this some new kind of torture? It looked at the fallen chain, then at the one who had freed it. Its mind couldn't understand this sudden huge change. The weight was gone from its neck, an empty feeling in its body that felt totally new. Slowly, carefully, it took one step, then another. There was no hard pull, no painful stop, it was free. Free to leave that small, dusty patch of ground which had been its whole world for so long. Many different feelings rushed through it all at once, doubt, fear, and an amazing feeling of freedom that was slowly growing. It sniffed the air, its legs were wobbly from not being used for so long and from being so weak. The yard, which once seemed huge and out of reach, was now open right in front of it. It could explore, it could run, if only it had a little strength. But the strongest feeling, even stronger than the new joy of being free, was the deep, painful hunger in its empty stomach. Its eyes, empty and sharp, scanned its surroundings. It was an animal hurting badly from hunger. Every part of its body was crying out for food. The memory of food, any food, was like pain to it. It looked at the house, the source of all its past suffering, but maybe also the source of its freedom. Would there be any scraps there? Would someone finally feed it until it was full? Its freedom felt very fragile, almost unreal, overshadowed by the simple need to stay alive. It was weak. Its body was living proof of not eating for a very long time. It had been unchained, but the chains of hunger still held it tight, controlling its every thought, its every urge. It stood there, a skinny figure in the neglected yard. The silence of the sick owner's absence hung heavy in the air. Its suffering had been long and silent. Now, its freedom was also silent, mixed with the bitter taste of what it had gone through. The owner was helpless and didn't have the power to be cruel anymore, and it, the dog, was alive and free. Was this revenge? Maybe. Or maybe this was just how things were meant to happen. It wasn't thinking about justice. It only knew the sharp, nagging pain of hunger. Its eyes, desperate, filled with a haunting hunger, stared at the house, a silent, powerful proof of its long suffering.